is the indelible moment for all of history.
So I asked Bill a question that probably some of you are thinking of if you're totally into that world, which I find to be very interesting. So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets in the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute.
That is the thing with President Donald Trump.
Powerful.
Anything he reads would sound interesting to him. Literally, that's his brain. It's just like it picks up anything. I think is really what happened. It's just like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like it could work. Like he has no critical reading or thinking abilities. It seems like anything that works, like that someone says works. Like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Huh? Never thought of that. Never looked at it that way. Yeah. So, he says, here's some, when it knocks down in 1 minute. Yeah, this is, you will surely really have noticed that this is the kind of stuff that they would get a normal person bundled off to an institution if they start screaming in public about it. It doesn't take a Nobel Prize to understand that Trump is spewing dangerous nonsense. Saying, oh, the president's kind of wrong here when it says to inject bleach into people is not a tricky one, and the analyst holding power to account. But the first instinct for the Times, probably the most important news outlet in America, was one to cringe away from what should, by all rights, be a very easy task in both its tweet and initial story. President Trump has long pinned his hopes on the powers of sunlight to defeat COVID-19. On Thursday, he returned to that theme. The daily White House coronavirus briefing, bringing in a top administration scientist to back up his assertions and eagerly theorizing dangerously in the view of some experts about the power of sunlight, ultraviolet light, and household disinfectants to kill the coronavirus. Dangerously in the view of some experts. That should be kind of placed. That should be put on a t-shirt or something like that. So that should be. I feel like that should be memorialized in some way. It's the some that really does it. Some implies that there are experts out there who may possibly back Trump up, that it is okay to maybe possibly think about putting Lysol in the body. Just incredible. It's just like it should be just, I don't get how hard it is to write an article and be like, yeah, that's insane, which I guess is what they did. So credit to them for that. Now they have this article up. Trump's disinfectant remarks raises questions about the very stable genius. But even still, that's kind of covered in the way. He brings up the questions about the very stable genius memo, but still, they're just like, it's like, what is the why do you make that jump in the first place? I think is something that really should be examined. Like, why are they having this instinct to say that, like, maybe some experts may think it's okay to literally inject bleach into your body, and then they have to come back, well, Trump said he's a very stable genius. He said he's a very stable genius, but this may prove that he's hypocritical about that. Maybe he's lying again. It's really kind of crazy, but yeah. We got to move on. From one crazy thing to another, Congress, ladies and gentlemen. The really interesting situation. This is a piece here from Jack Crosby of the Discourse blog, talking about. He talks about how he wrote. It's really good. He wrote a story for Vice News in 2015 about the local elections in Ukraine. The first major vote since the 2014 snap election that shifted the country's support behind then President Petro Poroshenko following the country's Maidan revolution. And it really kind of shows you how this October 2015 election was the country's first chance that the country's oligarchs, broadly and group of extremely rich guys who made money by hoovering up industry during the fall of the Soviet Union would have to readjust to the new political landscape and install their guys in elected seats across the country. In Mariupol, which is a city there, the main oligarch is Rinat Akhmetov, a steel tycoon with business in Russia and Ukraine, who at the time employed something like 50% of the entire city. So Akhmetov had a guy in the race for mayor, a young executive named Vadim Boychenko, who used to be the personal director of one of his largest steel companies. Boychenko met this guy with a group of other journalists, Jack Crosby, and he got the impression he was really just a middle manager. He wasn't trying to become an oligarch or rule the world. He honestly didn't seem all that interested in becoming mayor, especially when compared to his opponent, who was a bedraggled former computer programmer running against him at the head of a long-shot populist party. By running for mayor in Mariupol, Boychenko got to ride a very rich person's coattails and basically ensure a comfortable and stable life for his children and probably his children's children. To him, that's politics. It's a steady job, right? Might as well hold on to it if you can and take what you can get. After the first vote was thrown out by claims that Akhmetov did voter fraud to help Boychenko win, Boychenko won the repeat election and is still the mayor today of Mariupol. So, in the U.S., we like to think that our politicians are different in some way for some reason. Ukraine, it's a crumb country. It's had a little bit of chaos. It used to be in the Soviet Union. And, I mean, I thought this too for a long time. And probably you go up to a lot of Americans, you talk to them and say, do you think our government is stronger and more secure than that of Ukraine? They'd say yes. They look down on the Ukrainian government. In the U.S., we have ethics and laws, which supposedly make it so that people we elect to make those laws don't do shady insider baseball in order to stay in power and get richer while disregarding the actual interests of the people who voted for them. That never happens. By now, though, I think most Americans know that most of this is just BS. But every so often we get a really fantastic look about how stupid and kind of granular this charade is. This kind of brings us to Donna Shalala, the representative for Florida's 27th Congressional District. She's been floating around for years, and really the way that only people in Washington can kind of bounce around from one job to another job to another job to another job. She started off as the Health and Human Services Secretary under Clinton, and kind of then immediately got sucked into the Clinton make work farm almost. She was president of the University of Miami and then president of the Clinton Foundation, and her resume might as well leave all that stuff off and just scream, I'm a big, safe, status quo Democrat. That's pretty much who she is. She's very closely tied to the Clintons. She's very much for keeping things kind of the way they are, but kind of Miami establishment, Democratic establishment type person. Shalala, pretty much as far as national politics go, is basically a middle manager, someone who just kind of floats around, has connections, but isn't very ambitious, not a real climber. Last week, Speaker Nancy Pelosi named Shalala to a new 5-person congressional oversight commission that we talked about a few shows ago at least, set up specifically to make sure that the $4.5 trillion in potential corporate lending being doled out by the Trump administration was being doled out as appropriately as $4.5 trillion can be when it's going to companies, not people. Until Shalala and a couple of Republicans got named to the commission, its only member was a former Elizabeth Warren staffer who was literally being forced to scream at the Fed on Twitter in order to get some modicum of transparency into the process. So at least there's a safe Democratic vote on this impromptu commission with a massive amount of power over which lives and jobs and salaries will be saved during this devastating recession caused by this pandemic. But the problem is that a safe Democrat vote like Shalala doesn't look all that different than a safe Republican one. And as David Dye noted in the American Prospect, we actually read his article last time we talked about this on the show. Shalala isn't really qualified for the position that she has and little interest in doing her job. But here's the new development. Pelosi is sticking by her. And the broader point is, and this is so good here from Jack Crosby, Congress is filled with Donna Shalalas on both sides of the aisle. She's easy to single out for this particular instance because she's a 79-year-old first-term representative whose net worth is somewhere between 4.6 and 13.5 million dollars. Shalala's position on the commission gives Pelosi a vote she can leverage when making concessions to Republicans, which appears to be her primary occupation these days, besides eating ice cream out of her $24,000 refrigerator. Pelosi's net worth is at least $16 million and probably much higher. California's combined 55 members of Congress alone had a net worth of $439 million in 2016. Being in Congress, being in politics, folks, it's profitable. Like, this is not, like, there are more ways than just the salary to make Congress. I don't think anyone's just making just the salary in Congress, because there's a little bit of things you can do on the side to boost your coffers. That's the whole reason why most people get into politics. They're middle managers. They are not really that focused on becoming president. They're not focused on really moving up in the world. Really, they're just focused on squeezing the most juice out of the possible situation that they can be in. That's really, I think that's the way it works. That's the way it works. Really, these numbers are gross, but in the grand scheme of money and politics, not exactly oligarch level, but they belong to people who are so safe and insulated from their actual stakes of politics, and that really the decisions they make, don't matter to them. They live in separate worlds. They don't see the consequences of what they do, and that makes it so easy for them to make the same mistakes all over again. And that's a big reason why we get some of the problems that we're in. It's really a great point there. These are really company men and women who serve so that the actual CEOs don't have to run for office unless they're particularly narcissistic sociopaths like Michael Bloomberg or Donald Trump. They're middle managers. They're there to do the rich oligarchs' work for them, just like Boychenko was and Akhmetov, who's serving that rich guy Akhmetov in the story from before. They're middle managers, and when Shalala retires or keels over in office from her second stroke, someone who serves essentially the same purpose will take her place. Easy. Yeah, there's one thing for Boychenko, at least. We know who his boss is. That is really true. Yeah, we know who his boss is, but I guess we can kind of just assume who everyone else is. But it just shows you who these people are really working for. Coming up next, we will be talking about this great piece here from Katherine Krueger about a new normal. And will it ever be coming back? Just keep listening. It's the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. Hope you are enjoying your Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, and having a great quarantine, at least sticking through. I know I feel like I've kind of reached a new chapter. It's just like, let's just get this over with. And Katherine Krueger writing about this as well. She said, we've reached the part of the quarantine where if you were privileged enough to perhaps have enjoyed a honeymoon period where working from home and working and being at home all the time still felt novel, things are starting to feel long. I'm sick of my shows. I'm sick of my new shows. I'm sick of eating at home. I'm belly aching at my easygoing partner. I want to be helpful. I want to be numb and drop out, perhaps. Most of all, I really, really don't want to be working. But it's my job to know the news. I cover politics, but the current landscape somehow feels far more bleak than presidential politics ever did. I often don't seek out the day's corona news, but it finds me in push notifications and tweets throughout the day. The pitter-patter sounds something like de Blasio, Cuomo, playgrounds, May 15th, Trump tweet, Republican governor, news conference, death toll rises. That's pretty much about right. That's really pretty much about right. That's pretty much how this whole thing sounds like. But yeah, there's a lot of sameness if you don't zoom in further. But one constant baseline, even among the well-meaning people, which is they can't wait for things to go back to normal. Pining for normal has become some sort of a liberal fetish during the Trump years, as we know. Now more than ever, an appeal to normalcy would really seem to make sense. We are living through the extraordinary feel for times where even the worst actors among us would like it to come to an end. It's also wildly misguided. Normal for whom? Even if things looked pretty good for you under what you think of normal, what you think of as normal times, what about the working class, the uninsured, and the undocumented? It's a really true point. I think it's very important to realize that for a lot of these people, like, normal wasn't good. And I think what we can take this time now is to take, and it's going to be really tough. And that's why I really worry, is like, we see all these things, these blatant holes being poked in our society. And we know all the problems. I think a lot of people see the problems more and more. But the question that I really ask is, who is going to be able to do this? Who is going to be able to fill in these problems that are blatantly present in our society? We see them time and time and time again. Every single day, they're coming in, and they're very, very clear. The gaping holes in the social safety net. after decades of lawmakers hacking away at essential programs. We're already seeing unprecedented levels of unemployment claims, likely still kept artificially low by the fact that large swaths of people simply can't get through. The corollary is that even after the thing peaks, we'll be just getting started with the economy on life support, tens of millions unemployed, and a needed government